All right, so recording in progress, chapter 5, improving and assessing the quality of behavioral measurement. So this is going to cover C8, which is evaluate the validity and reliability of measurement procedures, and C9, which is select a measurement system to obtain representative data given the dimensions of behavior and the logistics of observing and recording. So this chapter is going to go into accuracy, reliability, believability, and all of the different IOAs. And I know that that can be really overwhelming because they have a whole bunch of different formulas, but I do have a nice visual that I can share with you guys later. Okay. So,
I'm finally here.
Yes, good, good, good. I'm glad.
Thanks. So this is the same passcode. I'm going to use it every week?
Yes, we use the same one every week.
Okay, thanks. What chapter are we doing?
We're on chapter 5, defining and measuring behavior.
Okay.
I'm so sorry to interrupt. And you guys have this all in recording too, because I could review for the other previous chapters.
Yes, I've been recording them all and I've been posting them on my YouTube.
Okay.
And I'll share that with you guys on the Facebook chat.
Thank you so much.
Yes, of course. Okay. So basically, we're just trying to figure out we're just trying to prove that our intervention indeed does have an effect on the behavior. We did cause some type of behavioral change. And I highlighted at the top of page 102 where it says, can you be trusted? And so that was something that like really stuck in my head. So just making sure that we have that trustworthy measurement. And the way that we do that is by ensuring that we have validity, accuracy, and reliability. So validity is your data directly relevant? So like I said, so does it in fact have an effect on your behavior? So who can tell me something that they got from reading about validity?
So validity is, are you measuring what you're supposed to measure? Like, for example, if we're taking data on whining for a client who's whining, and the day you're there, he's not even whining. That day he's just crying the whole time, and you're going to put negative in there. Basically, you didn't even have a chance to measure the data that was supposed to be measured. So that will be the validity issue.
Yep, and then it talks about validity measurement and applied behavior analysis requires 3 equally important elements. So one is measuring directly a socially significant target behavior. So making sure it's socially significant, measuring a dimension. So are you measuring something that can actually be counted? So I always like to challenge my RBTs to speak in a more behavioral way. So one girl today was like, I feel like he is being non-compliant, or I feel like he's, I don't know, just she was feeling something. And I was like, okay, but let me challenge you to speak more behaviorally. So tell me something that you actually saw. Being non-compliant or not engaging in something isn't telling me anything. So what is he doing that is making you say that you feel like he is upset or you feel like he is being non-compliant? So tell me what is surrounding that, that situation. So covering ears, right? Every time lady places demand, I cover my ears. So, okay, that's something that I could observe and I can collect some type of data. Every time I place a demand, he covers his ears. So I'm going to take some type of collective data, maybe frequency, maybe rate. So those measurements that we talked about last week in chapter 4. And then C, ensuring that the data are representative of the behavior's occurrence under conditions and during times that are most relevant to the question or concern about the behavior. Okay, so validity, isn't there like a nice little visual that tells you all of the differences between validity, accuracy, and reliability? So accuracy is like you're hitting it right on the dot, right? Like in the, if it's a bullseye, accuracy is like you got it right on the dot. And validity, do you guys remember those like little visuals that help you remember them? The differences? It's gonna drive me crazy trying to find them. Okay, well, I'll just keep going. So accuracy is the true value. So accuracy refers to the extent to which the observed value, so does it match the true value of the event? Obtaining a true value requires special observation and recording procedures that must be at least somewhat different from those used to produce the data being evaluated. And the differences must have the effect of minimizing the possibility of error to an uncommon degree. So that one is all about matching the true value. Anybody have anything to add on accuracy? Or want to talk about the example that they put here in Cooper?
I feel like accuracy is hard to attain in real life because, I mean, can you see it? And when you work in school, like I just did a presentation on how to take data. I had them take data of how many times I touched my face, right?
Mm-hmm.
And out of the 5 of them, none of them had the same answer, right? So I don't know, I feel like there's a lot of, when they use the word accuracy, like, are they looking for like a true number, meaning like a value or like a true observation data? Or I don't know. Do you see where I'm trying to say? Like, how accurate can a human being really be?
Yes, exactly. And then that's when they start talking about like measurement bias, and all of those different IOAs or different ways of collecting IOA to ensure that we are all accurate, accurately recording the data. So ways that you can ensure accuracy, who can give me, like as a BCBA, put your BCBA hat on, and everybody is collecting data, but they all have different data points, like kind of like Jen said. So what can we do about that situation as a BCBA? How can we fix it?
Would you do inter-observer agreement?
Well, I did the inter-observer agreement, and then I established that something is going wrong. Something is wrong with my procedure.
Okay.
There's some type of procedural integrity that is like, something's wrong, something's off. So what I always would think is, let me go back to the operational definition. So is my operational definition clear enough so that Jen knows what touching face means, Denise knows what touching face means, and Patricia knows what touching face means? So maybe she just slightly touched her hair, and Jen collected data on that, but Patricia didn't because she was like, that was her hair, not her face. So we just always want to go back and make sure that our procedure is sound, and that multiple people can produce the same measurement. So IOA is a way for us to ensure that we have treatment integrity. So as a BCBA, you will use it. Sometimes maybe you're just sitting next to the RBT and collecting data with them and seeing if they're collecting the same data as you, and all of that. So that is about accuracy. So who can tell me about what measurement bias is?
A non
Error.
a measurement error.
Yeah.
So I did give them all an operational definition in the chat with examples and non-examples. They still all had different numbers. So, I mean, it's hard. I'm laughing because that's real life, right? And I only part of my face, no part of my neck, and never when I touch my hair, right? So yeah, it's just interesting when you apply some of this stuff to real life examples, how
Yeah,
it's very booky and then it's very real life. So just
yeah.
keep that in mind.
Yeah, so you'll always want to take into consideration your measurement bias, where some people are going to underestimate it, some people are going to overestimate it, or maybe they become really close with the client and they're like, oh, well, he usually does this, so I'm just going to mark it as correct because I don't know, he might just be having an off day or something like that. So that is also a measurement bias where they're like, oh, well, he kind of did it, so let's just say yes, or something like that. So you will run into those type of behaviors, I guess, with your therapist. So just, I guess, knowing all of these things and taking them into consideration when you're analyzing your data. You're like, whoa, wait a minute, this graph looks crazy. Or an example that I could give you guys is like, I was looking at my graphs one day and I saw that one therapist during baseline, her data points were error independent, error independent, error independent. So what is that telling me?
That it's not a stable baseline.
It's not a stable baseline, but it's also telling me that she's probably teaching, and baseline is not a teaching, it's not the time for teaching. So she's probably collecting the error and then prompting him for the correct response or something like that. And now he's kind of learning, but baseline is not a teaching time. So that's when I have to go back and retrain this girl or remind her, hey, baseline is not teaching time. So there's no need for you to go in there and prompt him the correct answer to get him to an independent response, because I don't need that right now. So stuff like that, just to ensure accuracy, ensuring that your staff is properly trained on how to collect data, all of those things that you want to take into consideration for accurate data. Okay, and then it goes into talking about reliability. Reliability is consistent measurement. Repeated measures refers to the consistency of measurement, specifically to the extent to which repeated measurement of the same event yields the same value. Okay, so reliability.
Believability.
Believability, yep. Okay.
Every time I get on the scale, I weigh the same. That's believability.
Yeah, that's reliable.
But I wanted to know, the reliable does not mean it's accurate, right?
It doesn't mean that it's accurate, but it should have.
How could you believe a non-accurate measurement?
It's always wrong, right?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's always
Wrong.
showing the same result, but it's incorrect.
Yeah,
So
it might be a wrong result, but you checking it, maybe the scale is wrong. Maybe you don't have the good measurements tool, and you're measuring the same thing over and over, but it's actually a wrong thing that you keep getting the same answer because the tool is wrong. But when you have I'm saying if you have the accuracy, you have the accurate data, I'm saying it will be reliable. Because I did have a mock question. Is accurate data is always reliable? And then the other way was there too. Is reliable data is always accurate?
No.
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 So the
So-
other way is okay. The reliable data is not always accurate, but accurate data is reliable.
Yes.
Yes, because it's spot on and it should be spot on every time to that true value. And here in Cooper, it says reliability should never be confused with accuracy.
Mm.
Although high reliability does not mean high accuracy, poor reliability reveals problems with accuracy.
Right. Like my scale at home, when I go to the doctor, my scale at home, I'll keep getting the same measurement. When I go to the doctor, it's higher. Right. So then it's not
Not reliable.
reliable, but it wasn't accurate.
Yes, exactly. So maybe her scale is just a little off, but every time she gets on it, she weighs the same thing. But then she goes to the doctor and they have this high-tech, super accurate scale, and she weighs something completely different. But at home, when she weighed herself, it was same. So it was reliable at home, but it was not accurate.
Right.
Yeah, perfect.
They use an
And-
example of accuracy, Selena, I have here on my notes from, what was it, one of the SNABA Big Ben clock, they say is accurate, right? Because that's where for our time,
Mhm.
the Big Ben clock will always be accurate if you're trying to set your clock to the right minute or second, whatever.
Yes, that's a good one. Oh yeah, Olga put Big Ben clock. Okay, so threats to valid measurement. So then it goes into talking about indirect measurement. So that's pretty easy, right? We know what indirect measurement is. Who can tell me what an indirect measurement is?
You do through the checklist and rating scale and stuff, right?
Yeah, so we're not directly, the client is not in front of us. So maybe I interviewed mom, or maybe I asked him, or yeah, so checklist, interviews, all of that, where you're not directly in front of the client. Those are gonna be your indirect measurements. And then you have your direct measurement, which occurs when the behavior measured is exactly the same as the behavior that is the focus of the investigation or behavior change program. Okay. Did I confuse that with something else?
No.
No, I think you're right. An indirect measurement.
Oh yeah, questionnaire to measure his socialization with peers is an indirect measurement. Using a student score on a standardized math achievement test as an indicator of mastery is another example of indirect measurement. And then for direct measurement, what can be an example of direct measurement? So being in front of the client and just counting every time they hit somebody, or sitting there and timing how long they're tantrum is, those will be all examples of you directly measuring the behavior. Okay, what about measurement artifacts? What is an artifact?
Where it appears to still exist based on the measurement we've used.
Okay, isn't it basically like what's measured is inaccurate? Like there's an error.
Yeah.
Something
I
that
think
appears-
it's a misleading picture. Like you're measuring it, it makes you a misleading picture because I think you deviate from the main definition. You are not following, you're not, artifacts come when you deviate from the original definition. So like whatever the definition of behavior, and you're not following exactly
So it's like
what,
it doesn't have a meaning.
yeah, like how you do the operational definition before you start taking the data about the thing. So you deviate from that definition. You're not exactly following what you need to look for. That's what I think the measurement artifact come. You initiate with the correct measuring, the correct behavior, and then you, like a whining and crying example, you initiated with taking data on whining, but then you started taking data on another behavior that he's also doing side by side. So that's going to create an artifact. Am I
yes,
right?
yes, and right here it's saying validity is reduced. So it has to do with validity. So validity is reduced when the data, no matter how accurate or reliable they are, do not give a meaningful, valid representation of the behavior. When data give an unwarranted or misleading picture of the behavior because of the way the measurement was conducted. So that is your artifact. Okay, so then it goes into continuous measurement and discontinuous measurement. So continuous measurement. Oh, this is the one that I was telling you guys about last time. So when I'm collecting continuous data, that it means that I am observing and collecting data for every single time that behavior occurs. So all of those can be like your rate, your duration, your frequency, latency, IRT. I'm collecting it every single time it occurs. Versus your discontinuous measurement, it's any form of measurement in which some instances, not all, are going to be observed or collected data for. Okay, a data set produced by discontinuous measurement, no matter how accurate and reliable, may be an artifact of the measurement system rather than accurate portrayal of behavioral events. Oh, okay, so discontinuous measurement is artifact because it's not accurately portraying every single instance of their behavior. It's just observing every instance based off of your data collection method. So those will include your partial interval recording, whole interval recording, and your momentary time samples. So those are going to be discontinuous measurements because I'm not collecting every single time it happens. So who can tell me what a partial interval recording is? We kind of already talked about them, so we could just kind of briefly go back. Partial interval is just going to be, did the behavior occur at all during that interval? Yes or no? So I don't care if it occurred 15 times or if it occurred one time. I just want to collect data on whether it occurred during this amount of time, yes or no. Whole interval recording wants to know, did it occur for this entire period of time? And then momentary time sample, did it occur at the end or at the moment of the beep? Anybody have anything to add about continuous and discontinuous measurement?
So the partial, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna tell Patricia to repeat what she said last time.
Okay.
What was that? The partial, the
The
overestimating and,
No, the one where it was like discontinuous measurement.
oh, yes. Discontinuous measurement measures continuous behavior. Continuous measurement measures discontinuous behavior.
Yes, perfect.
Yeah, and then a partial interval, we use partial interval measurement system when we want to underestimate the behavior, right?
I don't think it's when you want to underestimate. I think when you're kind of looking at the behavior, you pick the interval. You want to be careful when you pick the interval. So like if you're, right, underestimating or overestimating.
Partial interval, I think, underestimates the behavior because you're only marking one yes or one no. It
Right,
could be done 15 times frequency,
Correct.
but you're only saying one yes or one no. So
right,
basically, it's
No.
going to be underestimate. The frequency of the behavior will be a lot, but you're only putting one mark, yes. So it's going to be underestimating. So if there is a behavior, like you want the kid to, like not do the hand flapping, okay? So you're really trying for a kid not to do hand flapping. That's what you're gonna work on. That's your target behavior, but you're using a partial interval, okay? So if he is doing 15 times or like for 10 minutes, you're still going to do, say, one yes.
Oh,
Right.
okay,
That's why
I
you wanna
found
be
it.
careful.
I found it. I found it. It says partial interval overestimates behavior.
Right,
Aha.
Whole interval underestimates behavior.
right.
So whole underestimate, just the other way around, sorry.
Well,
Whole,
partials use to decrease behavior, but it overestimates it, right? That's what I have in my notes. So partial overestimates behavior, but it's used to decrease a behavior.
Oh, so I was right. So if you're hand flapping, you want to decrease the hand flapping, so you would use the partial interval recording system.
But it overestimates it because you're only, just like what Selena said, you're overestimating the behavior, because in a partial, you could say that you're checking partial and you're saying that it happened. As long as it happened in that time frame, you're saying that even if it only happened once, you're saying that it happened, right?
Right.
Whereas it could have happened almost the whole entire time, but you don't know that. You just know that they checked it off, that it happened. It could have just, so you're overestimating the behavior, even though it only happened once. Does that make sense? I don't know, I guess maybe we need
Yeah,
a
the
vision.
way they explained that to me, if it overestimates, it's because you need to have a number to show decrease in a behavior. So you want the overestimation to give you that room to work with.
Yeah, that sounds, yeah, that's,
yes, that's perfect. And then for the whole interval, like she said, it's gonna underestimate the behavior because it might not occur for a whole 5 minutes, but he did engage in aggression for 4 minutes straight. Well, we're gonna say that he didn't, we're gonna collect an X where he actually did engage in behavior, but it wasn't for the whole time. So that's why we're saying that they're underestimating the true value of how many instances of aggression he engaged in versus the partial interval. We want, like Belinda said, we want to overestimate. So maybe I'm going to collect a partial interval and see, did it occur during this interval, yes or no? And he engaged in 15 intervals of aggression. And so then I drop my line and I start my intervention. And then he only engages in maybe 2 intervals of aggression. So that's a good way to think about it, the way Belinda did, where it was like, as a BCBA, yes, I do want to overestimate it. That way, when I drop my intervention line, it could look really good that I'm actually reducing the behavior. And then they also have that acronym. I don't know if you guys have heard of it, the POD-PUF.
Puff, yeah.
So partial POD-PUF. So partial overestimates duration, but partial underestimates frequency. So let's think about that. What did they just say? So partial is going to overestimate duration. So how long it occurred, right? So duration,
Right, so they're going to say it's longer than it actually was. So it's giving you that long duration of time so that you can decrease it.
And then partial underestimates frequency. So that's the one that I'm always able to go back and think about. So let's say he engaged in 15 instances of aggression, but you're only collecting 1 data point. So you're really underestimating the amount of times that he is really engaging in this behavior. Okay. All right, so those are our measurement artifacts. Discontinuous measurement is a measurement artifact where it's not giving us that validity or that meaningful, directly relevant to the amount of times it's occurring. Okay. Measurement scales that are over or under sensitive to relevant change in behavior may produce misleading data showing that meaningful behavior change has or has not occurred. So just being really, really careful in what type of data collection method you're choosing and not just going the easy route, like, oh, I'm just gonna choose frequency for everything because that is the easiest way. Okay. So then it goes into threats to accurate and reliable measurement. So human error is the biggest threat to accuracy and reliability. That is like the truest thing I've ever heard. How about you guys?
Yes.
Right.
So then it talks about poorly designed measurement systems, unnecessarily cumbersome and difficult to use measurement system creates needless loss of accuracy and reliability. So it's more taxing and more difficult to use. Your observer is going to be less likely to collect that data. So it's going to be not as accurate. So we kind of gave some examples of this last week, but like the example where you're telling the teacher to collect data using frequency every time the child hand flaps. Well, she has 20 other students, so she's not going to be able to collect every instance of his hand flapping. So her data is not going to be very accurate, and that was a poorly designed measurement system on your part. So you could have done something different and maybe done some type of discontinuous measurement to make it easier for her. But you also don't want to get too complex where she's like, okay, I'm just not going to collect this data because I don't even know what a momentary time sample is or something like that. Or central reach. Maybe central reach makes it too complicated and they're like, whoa, I'm not touching this anymore because the timer goes off sometimes and it doesn't. So whenever I'm doing time samples, I actually try to make it as easy as possible. So sometimes I'll use like a specific moment in time. So I'll tell them, okay, we're going to take a time sample, but it's only going to be for 1 hour. So that way they're not having to do it for their whole session. Or, hey, we're going to take a time sample. It's going to be for 1 hour. You can use this paper data sheet. And so I'm trying to make it as easy as possible so that they'll be more likely to collect accurate data for me. What another threat to your accuracy and reliability is inaccurate observer training. So that's another headache that you guys will have when you become BCBAs. It's like, is your company providing adequate RBT or technician training so that they can collect these data collection methods? Do they know the difference between frequency and time, or frequency and duration? Do they know that when they're collecting rate, they have to have the timer running? All of those factors. So you want to make sure that your observers are adequately trained. Selecting your observers carefully, training your observers to an objective standard of competence. Okay, and then it also gives us steps or examples of systematic approach for training observers. Have you guys read those, the 5 different steps on how to train your observers? I feel like that will be really helpful for us.
What page is that on?
Page 107.
107. So step 1, trainees read the target behavior definition and become familiar with the data collection form. So making sure that they know the difference between all of the data collection methods, procedures for recording their observation and proper use of any measurement or recording devices. Step 2, trainees practice recording simplified narrative descriptions of behavioral vignettes until they, what was that?
Is that BST, like that behavioral, does that kind of fall under that behavioral skill training thing? Or is that different?
Yeah, it kind of does sound like it. So step 1 was like basically explaining it to them, right? Step 2 is them practicing recording it. Step 3 is practicing recording longer and more complex descriptions. So practice again. Trainees practice observing and recording data from video recorded or role-played vignettes depicting the target behaviors at the same speed and complexity as it will occur in the natural environment. And then step 5, the final training step of observer training is practice in collecting data in the natural environment. So those are all of the steps that Cooper gives us for a systematic approach for training our observers. So who can tell me a little bit about observer drift?
Observers unknowingly apply the wrong measurement system. I'm trying to like shorten it.
Yep.
Observer drift. It has to be with the data collection. I think you started taking the wrong data.
These are intended change in the way data are collected may produce measurement error. Observers drift usually entails a shift in observers' interpretation of definition of target behavior from that used in training. So-
Yeah. So basically they're drifting away from your operational definition. Maybe they're no longer reading the definition. They're just like, oh yeah, I know what a tantrum is. And so they're just collecting data based off of their own memory of what they think that a tantrum is versus your operational definition of what you've defined that client's tantrum behavior to look like. Okay, and then we go into unintended influences on observers. So it talks about the naive observer, a trained observer who is unaware of the study's purpose. So that is one way to minimize measurement bias. They say that you should be really careful with like the amount of information that you share with your RBTs, because they will start to, I guess, kind of form their own opinions and their own biases. And they're like, well, he's a really good kid, so I think that he could do this. And so they're trying to collect data to make it look a little bit better, or something like that. So you always want to be very careful with the amount of information that you share with them. And that's something that I have to be really careful with, because I'm a trainer in my heart. So I'm always trying to give everybody a rationale as to why and what I'm doing it for. But you always want to be like, not give too much information on the intended purpose of your data collection method. Reactivity is also one of my favorites. So who can tell me what reactivity is?
So the reactivity is like you behave differently in the presence of your supervisor, for example, because you know your supervisor looking at you. So even though normally you would do better data collection, like a more accurate, like taking data on every instance, but because of you seeing the supervisor, you actually missing out, or the other way around, you going on the phone mostly, but when supervisor there, you taking every single instance. So
Yes.
Both way is reactivity.
Yes, perfect. So reactivity can be from your observer, and then you can also get reactivity from your observee, like the person that you're observing.
I had a hard time collecting the data.
Yeah, so like, let's say I'm sitting here with a clipboard and asking Patricia all these questions, and she's like, whoa, I don't know what Selena is trying to get at, but I'm gonna answer these as nicely as possible so that I look really good or something like that. So that can also help happen with your clients. And we see a lot of reactivity whenever we're doing initial assessments. So it's like they act completely different because somebody's standing there watching them with the clipboard and clicking around every behavior that they engage in. And then you bring them in for services, and then you start to see their real behaviors come out. You're like, whoa, I didn't see that when I was observing them in their initial assessment. So reactivity can happen from the observer or from the person that you're observing. But yes, that can also be a kind of a threat to your treatment integrity or your reliability. Okay. I also highlighted this sentence that says, the fundamental reason for determining the accuracy of data is obvious. no one wants to base research conclusions or make treatment decisions based on faulty data.
Which page number are you on, Shalina?
I'm on 108.
Okay.
And then in 109, it goes on to talk about calibration, entails comparing the data produced by a measurement system to a known standard or true value, and measurement system so that the data it produces matches the known standard. Okay, now I think it's gonna go into how do we establish true value? So how do we establish the true value of something? It's gonna go into talking about IOA. So ensuring accurate data recording. Measurement is reliable when it yields the same value across repeated measures of the same event. So measurement is reliable when it yields the same value when across repeated measures. So inter-observer agreement, everybody's favorite, right? Because it has all of those equations, and some of us are not math people. So like me, you're just like, you see equations or anything mathematical and you just black out. Okay, so inter-observer agreement refers to the degree to which two or more independent observers report the same observed values after measuring the same events. So what are the benefits of using IOA that you guys think, like as a BCBA, why would I collect IOA data?
Well, a good example is the one that I gave you guys about how I had all my staff collect my face touching behavior, and then I would get an average, right? I could actually add all them up and get like a mean value, and then maybe it would be accurate. But I was thinking about that. I was like, maybe this is where you would use IOA, like if not all 5 people, but 2 people, right?
Yes, you definitely could use IOA, and you could determine like which one you want to use to kind of prove like, hey, something is going on in my procedure that I may have to alter, or maybe I need to retrain staff on data collection. So it's always important that you collect random IOA to make sure that your observer or your therapist is actually collecting the correct data. So it functions as a basis for determining the competence of new observers. So that's also a good point. So let's say they add a new team member onto the team, and I haven't had a chance to train her yet. And I start to see that my graphs are looking crazy. This new lady is saying that my client hand flapped 150 times in her session, when this other girl said that she hand flaps maybe 50 times on average per session. So I'm like, wait a minute, what's happening here? Maybe this girl has a different interpretation of what a hand flap is. And that was actually what happened, is that the girl with 150 hand flaps was counting like each one. So let's say she goes really quick, like boom, 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 boom. That was 5. And so the girl would count each one as one instance. But in the operational definition, it says separated by a 2-second pause. So you would count those really quick ones as one based off of my operational definition. But this other lady is not collecting accurate data. So it's telling me that something is off with my observer. So I can maybe go back in there and retrain the girl, or ask her to read it again. or something like that. Systematic assessment of IOA over the course of a study can detect observer drift. When observers who obtain the same or nearly the same observed values when measuring the same behavioral events at the beginning of a study was high, obtain different measurements of the same events later in the study, IOA is now low. So one of the observers may be using a definition of the target behavior that has drifted. Bye, Patricia. She said, see you next week. Oh yeah, it's 7:30. Okay, so the third one is knowing that two or more observers consistently obtain similar data increases confidence that the definition of the target behavior was clear and unambiguous, and the measurement code and system was not too difficult. IOA increases confidence that variability in the data is not a function of which observers happen to be on duty for any given reason, and therefore that changes in the data more likely reflect actual changes in the behavior. Two reasons for assessing IOA. Anybody want to go into the two reasons why you would assess IOA?
To ensure consistent data collection, right?
Yeah. Believability. So it talks about believability and making sure that your observers have met that training criteria. So let's say I corrected the girl's behavior, I told her how to accurately collect data, and then I start collecting data along with her. Now she's collecting data the way I want her to. So now I am confident that this girl can indeed collect data based off of the criteria, so I could leave her alone for a while. Doesn't mean I'm not gonna still collect IOA when I do observe her just to make sure she's still doing it, but at least you feel a little bit better. And then believability enables consumers to judge a relative believability of the data, trustworthy and deserving of interpretation. All right, well, I'm going to pause the recording there on believability. And next week, we can talk about the requisites for obtaining valid IOA measures.